candidates to help residents in mobile home parks understand and know what's the best choice for you as a voter. I just got this thing today, probably most of you did. I wanted to go over that just briefly, that are here in this park. And there are a lot of people here from the park, but there's also people not from the park who are very welcome. Our voting place is the middle school. It will be open for 3 days before the election. The election is June 2nd, and it will be open on election day. And I think that's all the pertinent information we really need to know. And this is your ballot. So, with no further ado, I have invited Mary Burke and Evan Schwartz as candidates for the 5th District Supervisor, and that is Steve Madrone's district. He's retiring after 2 terms, to come in here and talk to us about their candidacy and what their hopes and desires and platform is. So we have prepared questions that they were given about a week ago, and these questions are based on questions that were sent to me via email from people who were invited. And if we have time afterward, we can do questions from the audience. So if questions arise while you're hearing people speak, don't hesitate to write them down or put them in your memory, and you may have an opportunity to answer those questions afterward. So at the beginning, what we're going to do is allow each candidate, beginning with Evan, to talk about what their platform is. What are they running on and about? After that, then the questions will be asked after Mary has her turn. Okay, so go ahead, Evan.
And we are using the mics?
Yeah, if you would. Push that button in until you see some electronic letters.
And then do I continue to hold it down?
And then, no, leave your thumb off.
Gotcha. Can you hear me, everybody? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today, Hillary. I appreciate you inviting me. My name is Evan Schwartz, and I'm running for 5th District Supervisor. I've lived in Humboldt County now for about 23 years. I moved here to go to college. I went to College of the Redwoods and Humboldt State University. At Humboldt, I earned a business degree in marketing and used what I learned in school to stay in the area and start a few local businesses that serve my community. I've been in the grocery business, natural foods here in McKinleyville, which is where I learned a lot about the community and community needs, looking through my little window on Central Avenue and talking to all sorts of different people, because everybody eats. So I knew people on both sides of the aisle, different socioeconomic backgrounds. We all kind of rallied around food and coming together. I've also been in the beverage and distribution business. I started a malt beverage, chocolate, and kombucha distribution business. My wife and I navigated all the federal, state, and local regulations and permitting and reporting associated with running that kind of a heavily regulated business. And I really enjoyed interfacing with the government and learning how to navigate those processes. Some people think they're very arduous, and they can be, but they're methodical, and I really enjoyed following the steps and working with the government to achieve all my permitting needs. I'm very interested in serving the community. I'm a community member. I'm a family man. I have children in town. We play sports. We recreate here locally, and I would really love to serve the community and help it grow. I'm here to help, and I'm running on a platform of transparency and communication and decision-making, pushing for economic stability, and advocating for the efficient and effective delivery of county services. I look forward to answering your questions today, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce myself. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Burke, and I am a candidate for 5th District Supervisor. I'm often asked why run for supervisor, and I believe it's because I share a vision with many of you for a healthy and prosperous Humboldt County and the kind of prosperity where nobody's left behind. And why me for the role of a supervisor? And it has to do with the work that I've done. Is my mic going in and out? It's okay. when we have issues that are faced, right, it's vitally important that we come together and we learn each other's values, we learn shared interests, and then when it comes to the issue, we frame the decision to be made around that issue. But my favorite part about this recipe is that we go on a shared learning journey together about this issue. And when we get to the end of that, by understanding each other's values, shared interests, we're ready to make durable decisions for our future. So those are the skill sets and methodology that I bring, but let me tell you a little bit about how I got there. It started here in McKinleyville. So I have lifelong ties to the community that I get to live in now. And I got to run around in the forests of the McKinleyville Land Trust bluff. I got to cross the river and play on the beach. And this landscape was deeply rooted in who I've become. I pursued an education in ecology. And first I studied birds. I was so happy running around in the forests, you know, just getting to be out and honestly, like outside of town. But I started to pay attention to bird die-offs, to fish kills, and it led me to ask who's making the decisions and what are the factors that are leading to these devastating outcomes. So roll that forward a number of years, and I came up here to Humboldt State, now Cal Poly, and got a master's degree in environmental systems in a program, International Development and Technology, which taught me about economics and politics. And I really learned that, you know, the decisions about how fish and birds live well, they're people decisions. And it led me to be more interested in getting involved. So when I moved to McKinleyville, I immediately jumped into public service and joined the McKinleyville Community Services District Recreation Advisory Committee. Later, when a seat became available, I ran to be a director for McKinleyville Community Services District, and I was elected for 3 years. That ended in 2020 when I was a full-time mom and full-time employed and decided not to run again, but I kept up that service on 2 important subcommittees for incorporation, exploration, and multimodal access across our community. So I've seen great success in this recipe for collaboration in community work, and I've also seen great success in the conservation and restoration work that I've done across the 5th District. So this brings me to today, when running for supervisor would be a way to bring these interests together and to use that methodology to help us chart a path for our future. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to ask the first question, and Steve, Evan, you can start. The first question is, whomever gets elected will inherit a $12 million county budget deficit. What ideas do you have to mitigate this very serious problem? Uh-oh. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, I didn't make it.
I know, I did.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. The question of the budget deficit inheritance is pretty interesting. Humboldt County, no doubt, has suffered economically over the last few years. Anybody who's been here for a long time knows that we've kind of historically been a boom and bust natural resource economy, whether it be timber, fisheries, cannabis. Those things are kind of gone. And whether you were in support of fisheries or support of forestry or support of cannabis, the money is not in the community like it used to be. And we need to really take a solid look at how we function without that financial contribution to the community, as that affects property taxes where people have left, and sales tax where people are no longer spending dollars in the community. And my approach to that would be to work with the county administrative offices and legal counsel for the county to understand where we can examine budget matters in each department with the department heads and see where we can create efficiencies and try to reduce costs. It sounds more simple than it is, but in running business or running small business, what I've always been responsible for is examining for efficiencies and trying to reduce wasteful spending. That's how I've been able to grow my businesses. And the county is obviously very different than a regular for-profit business, but we all run on the concept that if your expenses exceed your budget, it's not sustainable. And so I would like to work with the county administrative office to identify ways that we can reel back our spending and selectively seek out programs to pursue until we can remedy long-term solutions for the budget weakness. And hopefully those long-term solutions come in the form of housing development and economic development with reasonable business development in our community that will attract people to want to live here, work here, play here, and recreate here. And so with that being said, I think the long-term solution is fiscal responsibility and nuanced growth in the right sectors that bring people here to help us grow the community. Thank you.
Sorry, some people weren't here when I said it. If you have questions, if you could save them till this is over, then we'll take questions from the audience.
So the question of the $12 million budget deficit at the county level is a sobering one, to be sure. To have that deficit combined with the reduction from our federal government to provide the critical services in the county is certainly devastating. It leaves a lot of our county programs and people vulnerable, especially those on Medi-Cal. So I have a few ideas here. One is that I support the steps the county is already taking to address this deficit. There is a painful but hopeful budgetary forecast, and I'm interested in looking at the opportunity for collaboration through organizational changes at the county. So the steps that the county is currently taking to address this deficit, well, certainly having the most recent auditor controllers in place so that the county departments can really understand where the budget is, helps everybody stay on track. And as far as stability goes, my understanding from talking with Supervisor Arroyo is the $12 million deficit comes from additional requests to the general fund. And so the county has already been working on reducing those requests to the general fund, and their goal is to have those reductions down to zero by next year. There's also been a freeze on hiring, and I think the county will continue that freeze. And while the budget looks like it does, I support keeping that freeze in place, but it comes with a really low morale. So I'm hopeful that if elected, I would be in a position of helping negotiate for raises. The painful but hopeful budgetary forecast may be painful for those of us who are homeowners. So as I understand, the assessor's office has been catching up on some property tax assessments. And so that additional budget will help by coming into the county coffers. It'll be painful for us, but helpful for the county. And as far as organizational changes, our county has an interesting structure with the department heads reporting directly to the Board of Supervisors. And I'm interested in how this structure plays out across organizational culture. So in the workplace that I've had for the past 13 years, I've had a chance to understand how a focus on collaborative culture can lead to great outcomes where you end up doing more with less. And not that I expect, county staff will be able to do more with less, especially in a time where we're getting less from the federal government and we have this budget deficit. But it certainly is a way to try to work internally across county departments to support collaboration and make sure that departments aren't working in silos. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, given that Humboldt County is one of the poorest counties in the state.
If I could, we were going to do like 5 minutes, and...
Oh, and response.
Response?
Do you have a response?
I could formulate a response.
Well, you're
Sure.
not required to have one.
No, I do have a question though, and so talking to Kevin Jenkins. He's a local business person, developer. You know Kevin. He has let me know that the county may be coming in and rezoning parcels to be able to keep up with the RENA numbers, but that there are a number of parcels that maybe in some of these last rounds of RENA numbers have been inappropriately zoned as residential, even though there's wetlands on there and the wetland rules for development have changed. So when these parcels were reassessed under whatever RENA round it wasn't taken into consideration how the wetlands were to be managed. And Kevin made the argument that he thinks that we may be going in a direction where some of these properties are actually going to be reassessed in a reduced fashion because they're not actually buildable to the extent that the planning department rezoned them. Do you have any thoughts on that? Thank you.
I guess we have conflicting information in that my understanding is that there will be additional assessments that have been backlogged in the assessor's office that will be coming forward, and so those assessments from past years will be bringing in more budget to the county. But on the topic you're bringing up, I don't have additional thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And then did you have a comment, Mary?
No, thank you.
Okay.
No, I think she was just trying to clarify because in the email you sent, we would each speak and then have the
Right.
opportunity to speak between ourselves.
Okay.
And so she just wanted to clarify, I think.
Okay, so question number 2. Given that Humboldt County is one of the poorest counties in the state, how do you reconcile that with its Board of Supervisors earning some of the highest salaries in the state? And you go first, Mary.
Okay, thank you. Again, we're starting with 2 really sobering questions. I just want to start by acknowledging some local employment statistics. There was a great article in LoCo from February 20th that says the rate of full-time employed workers living in poverty has nearly doubled in the past 10 years locally. That Humboldt County's residents enrolled in CalFresh is more than 2 times the state average. And so that brings me to then the question, I have a few thoughts on this. The statement is partially factually wrong, so I'd like to address that. And then this job of being supervisor is more than a full-time job. And the bottom line is, what do you desire in representation? So first off, Humboldt County is indeed one of the top 10 poorest counties, but our supervisors are not some of the highest paid. A few factors here. Our Humboldt County Board of Supervisors do not have committed staff, unlike other counties, so they are indeed working their full-time job. We made a decision in Humboldt County not to tie our salaries to elected judge salaries, like other counties have. And intro salary is about $100,000 a year. It's comparative to Mendocino and Lake counties, which have much smaller populations, but is lower than other similar-sized counties. So this job is more than a full-time job, and in fact, it's paid less than 400 other employees at the county. So those highly specialized folks who have bring their specialized experience, they earn much more than county supervisors. But the bottom line here, I believe, is what do you desire in representation? Who do you want to represent you? Having a competitive salary for, say, a mid to upper level range professional can allow someone who is at peak career to bring their expertise to serve the county. If the salary is less, the pool of applicants might change. So retired folks who bring an incredible amount of skills and knowledge experience may be able to serve, but they may also tend to be using tools and experience that are based on old models. Secondarily, independently wealthy folks would have a chance to step forward for a job like this that doesn't pay a competitive wage, but tend to be out of, as we see in the federal level, extremely wealthy people tend to be out of step with the people that they serve. So I would not be in a position to take the job of Humboldt County Supervisor if it didn't have a competitive wage. I am a major wage earner in our family, and I need to bring that money in. So do you desire that a supervisor be a part-time job or a full-time job that brings in people who are bringing their peak performance from their peak expertise in performance to the job of supervisor? Thank you.
Thank you. I keep checking, but can you guys hear me okay when I turn this thing on? Thank you. So, to speak to your notion that we are amongst the poorest counties in the state of California, and I think that poorness is an interesting word because if you look at it financially, we may be economically one of the poorer counties in the country, or I'm sorry, in the state, but we are intrinsically rich, and the beauty and value in living here, in my opinion, is second to none. We've considered moving, and we've looked at other places. We've grabbed real estate guides all over the Pacific Northwest, and this is where I'd like to live. I have no desire to leave. And so though we may be financially not as strong as some other areas, I think intrinsically this place is just richer than so many others. And that's what's motivated me to stay here and to serve. Now, when you look at the pay, it breaks down if you do about a 40-hour work week, that's $45 an hour. I want you to think for a second how much it costs you to take your car to the mechanic, how much it costs you per hour to have a plumber at your house, and how much it costs you to have an electrician. Skilled labor in these areas is upwards of over $100 an hour now, depending on what you're trying to do. So for $45 an hour to ask somebody to please step in and help the county get back on track, I think is money well spent. I think in other areas, supervisors earn more money because they have a larger asset base and larger budget to pull from and work with, and they have more support. Here, our supervisors are economically challenged. We are logistically isolated, and historically we have not been exactly business friendly. So you're asking a supervisor to come in for $45 an hour and try to do their part to uplift this community out of economic hard times and usher in prosperity. And I think that's a very fair deal for $45 an hour. Thank you.
Do you have a response?
Just to get to tell a little story, I had a chance to be at the North Coast Resource Partnership meeting the other day, and was looking forward to meeting Heidi Carpenter-Harris, who would be the supervisor, if elected, that I would serve next to. She's from Trinity County. And I approached her and said, hey, I really look forward to getting to work with you if I'm elected. And she said, well, I'm sorry to say I am not running again for election, in that she just couldn't make it work. So Trinity County supervisors earn about $40,000 a year. And that, to me, was just a statement in how, we were losing a really great public servant because she just couldn't make it work financially. So again, I think, sounds like Evan and I agree on this, that the wage is worth it to get skilled professional people into the job. Thank you.
Okay, question number 3. What is your position on McKinleyville attaining incorporation as a city?
I really like the idea of McKinleyville achieving incorporation as a city, but it's not a personal agenda mission of mine. I think what the most important message that I hear through this is that McKinleyville wants more local representation as it relates to matters that the county currently handles. And I've always been a big supporter of that as I've watched the county come into McKinleyville and either half finish a project or not maintain a project effectively. And I think that that is why the MCSD is such an important function and fixture in our community. The MCSD does what the county kind of should help us do, but only has so much control because they're not a governing body. We don't have a city council. They are not responsible for zoning and planning. They're really responsible for our water, sewer, parks, and lighting, which is really above and beyond for a normal community services district. I think answers about incorporation is to carry through with the study as it was recommended by the Humboldt County Civil Grand Jury. The Board of Supervisors, for whatever reasons, likely budget reasons, did not actively allocate funding to pursue that study. And I think that that is where we are currently. McKinleyville would benefit from a proper incorporation feasibility study, but not just an initial study. It's been brought up in the news lately that Senator McGuire, through Mr. Steve Madrone, was able to allocate $50,000 towards the initial feasibility study for incorporation here in McKinleyville, which is a beautiful step in the right direction, but it falls some $250,000 short, if not more, of achieving a full feasibility study. I learned that from speaking with the planners at the advisory committee town hall that was held last weekend. It was very informative, and incorporation is about more than just whether we want incorporation, but it's what the LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Committee, has to say about incorporation and redundancies and efficiencies that we could work out between the county. And for us to even have it go to a vote, we have to complete all of these LAFCO studies to determine that we economically and socially and infrastructure-wise can handle incorporation and pay for that study before we even get an opportunity to vote on it as a community, which I think is kind of backwards. We should be able to vote on it, allocate funds for a study, and then move forward if the study yields sufficient results that support our beliefs or not. But it's backwards, and it's very interesting. And so I'm in favor of incorporation if it creates efficiencies and gives McKinleyville a voice, so we're not just second to the Humboldt County Planning and Zoning Department, but that we can control town how we see fit. But if it's not economically reasonable, I'm in favor of working very closely with the county to help achieve the goals of McKinleyville. And I think a great example of something that just happened is that the McKinleyville Community Services District was granted an advisory seat on the Technical Advisory Committee for the Humboldt County Association of Governments. I know that's a mouthful, but what that means is, the MCSD is not a government, and the Humboldt County Association of Governments, that's government bodies. They gave the MCSD the ability to have an advisory role in a technical capacity as it relates to development in McKinleyville's infrastructure. So while that's not a government seat or a government position, what it shows is that the county is listening very closely to McKinleyville and to the MCSD because their infrastructure underneath all the roads is very important. And if the county comes in and does road work and has not coordinated with the MCSD, we have problems, and there's examples of that having happened in the past, like when they did the roundabout at School Road. So I'm in favor of exploration. I'm in favor of the Board of Supervisors advocating for the allocation of funds for a full-scale study, not just the $50,000 to start, gets us just through the doorway, but not to the finish line. And I look forward to hearing the results because that data is what will enable us as a community to make a decision together. Thank you.
Thank you for the question about whether McKinleyville should incorporate as a city. And this decision is a decision of the voters about whether or not to incorporate, and we need the real data to inform voters about this decision. So this question has been circulating in our community for decades, and no one has been able to bring the real data forward until now. There are people have concerns over taxes, and that is valid. And the decision around incorporation has to do with whether or not we want better services in our community. So starting with the data being available and not accessible for decades, there have been a few studies that have been done just using other cities as proxies and trying to understand the data from the outside. But those studies fall way short of the regulations or the requirements from the Local Agency Formation Commission, the LAFCO, that they would require. So back in 2017, when I was a director for McKinleyville Community Services District and traveling to Sacramento, I was approached by other services district directors. And they said, hey, you're from McKinleyville and you're unincorporated, aren't you? And I was like, yes. And so we started comparing notes about what it's like to live in an unincorporated community. And lo and behold, the nuances of sidewalks to nowhere and planning issues and whatnot came to light. And I said, oh, wow, I see myself in you, I see my community in your community, even though this was a community just outside of Folsom, Arden Arcade. So that got a lot of, questions in my head about, well, why does this exist? And, shouldn't it be easier for us to be a city? And so a lot of research ensued, a lot of understanding from my friend and colleague. And fast forward a few years, and I brought a few presentations to the community. One of those presentations was to the MCMAC, the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee, and they said, you know what? Kevin Jenkins in particular said, I went through this in 2000, and we did a study, and it looked favorable back then, but we need the data. Let's form a subcommittee that's publicly held meetings for us to be able to do this work transparently, step by step. So I've been a part of that committee since the beginning, and indeed can report that we have great news from working in that subcommittee with Supervisor Madrone and going to Senator Mike McGuire. We were able to show him that we were ready for an infusion of funding to do the initial feasibility analysis, and indeed it's been granted, and we're in the contract development process to pursue a contractor to do that work. That information should come available within about a year. We have great participation in this subcommittee from local LAFCO, and we also have participation from Cal Poly Humboldt. The economics professor, Josh Zender, I pulled him in when I remembered that he had great expertise and interest in McKinleyville, and lo and behold, he pulled a class together, did a great report on incorporation that you can find on the county's website. And it also showed an indication of feasibility. And now he's launched into this economic development study, which I also look forward to seeing the results of later this year. But concern over taxes, right? That's what you hear when you start talking about incorporation. And this, again, is a voter choice. Taxes don't happen to us. They happen when we choose to vote for them. Here in Humboldt County, we have Measure Z, we have Measure O. These are demonstrations of our will to pay for higher taxes when we believe we will get better services. So in McKinleyville, are our services poor? Well, when you're talking about water, wastewater, streetlights, open space, and recreation that McKinleyville Community Services District delivers, absolutely not. I've never heard anybody complain about the service that MCSD provides. It's excellent. And the way they run their agency is fantastic. I had a chance to serve with Dave Couch and John Corbett, Dennis Mayo, and George Wheeler. A great brain trust that not only is forward-thinking for infrastructure, but also for their PERS coverage. But what it really comes down to is land use planning. The Town Center Ordinance, as an example, we will benefit so much from the build-out of the Town Center Ordinance under the Ann Pearson Foundation. But planning on a postage stamp, it doesn't work well, right? So the tension that we felt as the Town Center Ordinance moved forward around the design of the roadway for Central Avenue, it had to do with trying to plan that in a postage stamp section of our community. What we need, and what I asked for, what I called for when that moved forward with a comprehensive multimodal circulation plan for us to understand how we can get around our community, how we can have roads that work for residents, that work for businesses, and that are safe for all of us. So lastly, on the sidewalks to nowhere, right, is when you have a city, you can develop a plan to get your sidewalks built out so that we can have safe ways to get to the middle of our community. So closing, I believe in fair representation right now, and fair representation and local people making decisions about local issues. Right now there's 1 out of 5 supervisors that's looking at McKinleyville, but also is serving the needs of the 27,000 people in this district, and then making decisions across the 136,000 people of the county. is this the fair representation or 5 representatives from our community making decisions about McKinleyville issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Can you hear me? So I'd like to talk a little bit about what you just said. I think that there's a number of people in this community that feel that MMAC is 5 people in a room making decisions for the community as well. And that's why I'm running, is to represent the people who aren't part of that small circle that feels like they're represented by the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee. To talk about the town center, you were very involved in the McMac during that, and it's come to my attention that, you know, the MMAC was not supposed to really back any particular builder or any particular plan or any particular project, but I find it interesting that, you know, you just gave credit to Ann Pearson. But when you were approached the other day for Life Plan Humboldt and support for the road on Hiller, you basically told Mrs. Lindsay that that was beyond your scope and that you couldn't help her. And if the multimodal transportation plan for the new town center is so comprehensive and well thought out, how come the county has not assumed any responsibility for connectivity in town here as part of that multimodal plan? Why is the county planning department and public works not taking responsibility for widening Hiller Road so there's access? Why is there not connectivity through to School Road to ease traffic on Central Avenue so residents and travelers and students and pedestrians can get around town in a multimodal fashion? I feel like the town center plan got pushed through with a rider of a road diet at the last minute, even though yourself and Mr. Madrone reassured the community that those things would not get passed. And you're correct, the supervisors, the other 4, pushed those things through with Mr. Madrone's support. And I really do believe that McKinleyville deserves better representation. And I was in town when the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee started with Ryan Sundberg and Ben Shepard, and that was a voice to the supervisor. It wasn't an agenda-driven board. They listened. They took people's opinions into consideration, whether they were on their agenda or not, and they made it a point to stand up for this community. And that is what I would like to do as 5th District Supervisor, and in the pursuit of incorporation if it is fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Mary, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you. Well, first, to be clear, the town center ordinance is an ordinance, it's a zoning ordinance that applies over a wide area, the area that's zoned as town center. That property is owned by Ann Pearson. So when you're talking about development of the Ann Pearson Foundation, the ordinance allows that development to go forward. There is no project on the table with the Ann Pearson Foundation. There is a zoning ordinance that would allow a project to move forward for the development of a town center to benefit all of our community. When talking about a multimodal plan, a comprehensive multimodal circulation plan across our community, none of that exists at this time. But we deserve, before we make any changes to our roads, we deserve to understand how they will function across our whole community. How will people on the east side of Central Avenue get around if there are changes to Central Avenue? How can we make on-ramps and off-ramps and connectivity to the center of our town easier, like connecting the roundabout on School Road that is being held up because of a development project that needs to get built out before that moves forward. So there are a number of issues in our community related to roads, and I would just like to repeat again, our roads need to work for residents, for businesses, and for safety for all of us to be able to get around our community. Thank you.
Okay, the 4th question. What is your position on Measure D rent stabilization in mobile home parks in the unincorporated areas of Humboldt County? And I can't remember who we start with. I think Mary. Yes, that's me.
Thank you for the question about Measure B rent stabilization in mobile home parks in unincorporated Humboldt County. Well, this measure passed in 2016. Thank you for leading the efforts there. Voters supported it with 55% of the vote. I am in favor of this. I support rent stabilization. Rent increases would reduce affordability. Rent increases would reduce the value of your investment in this park. And in 2025, state law repealed a long-term lease exemption, which I believe has benefited you here in Ocean West. This type of rent stabilization in a mobile home park ensures that we have a diversity of housing stock, and it's critical that we maintain this type of affordable senior housing. I'm curious how Measure B is working for Ocean West, how well the increase being tied to the Consumer Price Index is working. Enforcement is often complaint-driven, and so I wonder if there are issues, how well is that process working? So recently, related to housing stock, I had a chance to talk with Barbara Georgiana and our retired sheriff, who were talking about how the housing stock limits vitally important services, both for the medical industry and also for law enforcement officers, and that no housing options are actually critical factors in us not having the medical personnel be able to find housing options, and it's a critical factor in them being able to bring in new deputies to the sheriff department. So it is critical to have mobile home rent stabilization in order to preserve affordable home ownership.
Just to be consistent, you can hear me then, right? Thank you. Measure B is really interesting. It wasn't really on my radar. That's not something I've really thought about. I own my own home. I've lived in rentals and definitely been the person who got the phone call that my rent was going up out of nowhere, so I know how that feels and what kind of monkey wrench that can throw into your financial planning, especially if you are on a fixed income or lower income. Humboldt County rent used to be so cheap here when I moved here 20-something years ago, $400 for an apartment. Those same apartments are $1,000 a month now or better. We're seeing that as CPI creeps up and inflation, it's a dirty word, but as inflation kind of sets in, our dollars aren't going as far. And it should be acknowledged that these parks are built by businesses that rent space to people who own these lovely mobile homes, but they're not easy to move. And so there's the notion of a captive audience here. And if they continue to raise the rent on people, it may look good for the corporation's bottom line and return on investment, but it's not good for the community. And there's this very delicate dance, and this is an interesting one to me because there's this dance between the government price setting and free market economies. And this has been acknowledged that this is a remarkably unique, extraordinary scenario that needs to be handled with some sort of subjective grace. And so what has happened with Measure V is that it's allowed for the implementation of predictable rent increases so that people are not shocked every year when it's time to open the mail with that letter, the insignia on the letterhead. And so while generally as a business person and somebody who believes in the free market, I think price fixing is strange, and I wish that if we price fixed, we did it on like gas and groceries too, because life's really expensive. But as it relates to the sensitive population that lives in fixed, hard-to-move mobile homes in parks that are largely owned by out-of-the-area profit-driven corporations, I'm strongly in favor of supporting our community and its vulnerable population so that they're not displaced. And as it is here locally, I'm very much in favor of Measure V. With that being said, I like ideas and I like solutions. And one of the things I wanted to put out to your group is if any of you have looked into resident-occupied communities, and if that's on the table here, and if I see you, so I'd love to hear from you.
It's only if the investors choose to sell,
Right. Okay.
and they don't.
Correct. And that makes sense. You can't force them to sell. But from all my exploration and looking this up and reading, it seemed to me to be a good branch to grab to. But I can understand you can't force their hand to sell. But if we can force their hand to fix rent, maybe in the future they can look at it in a perspective that maybe they should divest and put this in the hands of the community rather than trying to extract profit out of the community at your expense. And then if people are displaced, where do they go? They become, for lack of a better term, a financial burden on the county. People become unstable. They lose their homes. People need to be honored and protected, especially in a senior community mobile home park. So I am in favor of Measure B. Thank you.
All right, final question.
Could I?
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to point to the fact that so many things are on the horizon in McKinleyville, that we have Humboldt Commons coming forward. We have We Are Up happening, two incredibly community-minded developments, right? And again, back to what we hope will be, well, what we can expect to be the center of our town being built out to serve all of our residents, the town center. And rent stabilization here is really a nod to making sure that as all these changes happen, and as all these changes move forward, that there is that reliability and predictability that helps maintain places for people to live who live here and now. We must make sure that with the changes coming, that we're forward thinking and that we're taking care of the people who already live in McKinleyville.
Okay. Final question. From the prepared ones, we will open it up to the audience. If you are elected, what you believe will be the biggest challenges you will face, and how will you deal with them? Mary, we'll start with you.
The biggest challenges I will face if elected supervisor will certainly providing fiscal stability, closing gaps in essential services, and economic development that works for us, and then a few personal challenges. But fiscal stability is critical, right? In this time, as we talked earlier about federal funds being scaled back, that pinch on our county services and on county employees and community members is going to be devastating and difficult. Closing gaps in critical services. So as I've had a chance to be moving around the 5th District and talking to people during this campaign season, I've met with Willow Creek Volunteer Fire Department. So they experience a couple, as an example, they experience a couple of issues. One is a decline in volunteerism. And you and I may know it's hard enough just to get by on the job you have, let alone stepping forward to be a volunteer for the fire department. So they struggle with that. But the other thing that they struggle with is providing service out of area. So 299, one of our major thoroughfares, right, there's a service area gap. And the Willow Creek Fire Department, they are going to show up if they get a call, but it takes them out of their service area. So one of the roles that the county supervisor can play is connecting across these critical gaps. So making sure that our state representatives are connected with local communities. I had a chance to sit down with Damon Connolly, who is running to be our next state senator. And he said, after I was talking with him about this gap in service on 299, Mary, I'm so glad that you are out in the community working to understand the issues, because when you bring these issues forward to us at the state, we are going to make sure that they get addressed. And lastly, also around vital community services, another example up in Orrick. They have been working up in Orrick to try to provide community wastewater for decades. and they haven't been able to do it yet. They may be getting closer, but really, how do we support our special districts? Not all of them operate like MCSD. In fact, MCSD is like a gold star across the state. But these community services districts are providing the vital services that we need, but I also know that they struggle. They're small populations pulling from a small group of people to serve on their board of directors, and it's challenging. So how might we support community services districts even better? And for economic development that works for all of us, we may see large outside investment like was on our doorstep with Nordic Farms and how offshore wind was moving forward. But we've also seen the damage of historical extractive industries and economic-driven interests and the damage that is caused. So I like to focus on what does local economic development look like? And I believe the county can play a role to improve support and coordination to address the limiting factors that hold back small and local businesses. For example, how far does a local producer who's growing cattle and sheep on his property have to take these animals to be processed, right? We don't have a local meat processing facility anymore. We need an ICE facility to hold the products of local fishermen. When local businesses thrive, we all thrive. And personally, my challenges are really going to be learning what I don't know. The county is a large institution, particularly Department of Health and Human Services and Law and Justice. These are two of the largest budgetary and complex elements of the county. Thank you.
So, I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. The county, from listening to Steve and some of the other supervisors speak, it's no secret that we are in some sort of a budget crisis from long-term systemic imbalance in budget and funding and county spending. So I think one of the biggest challenges for me is going to be understanding the elements of that, working with the county administrative office and trying to remedy some systemic issues without being perceived as somebody who's trying to cut jobs or slash spending, really just trying to understand what is going on and how did we get here, and figuring out a path forward and preserving jobs and preserving projects. I think that's going to be my biggest challenge, is preserving what we have, preserving county jobs, and making projects happen, because it seems to be where we're kind of stalling out right now. We don't really have the funds to support all of the programs and departments that are coming to the county asking for support. Another big part of it is balancing all those differing perspectives that are in the county and making sure that the county delivers adequate services throughout our district and the other districts. The county has big responsibilities and is working with limited funds and limited resources, and they're spread pretty thin. And so learning how to work with the county departments to be able to achieve reasonable objectives without spreading ourselves too thin or creating a large debt load or overspending situation. These are challenges that I'm really excited about, because I've always been kind of like a lean startup business person, and I really pride myself on being able to find cost-effective solutions to large problems. I'm a problem solver. So I think that though that's considered a big challenge, that's why I'm here. I'm here for a challenge. If this was a cakewalk, there'd be 400 people here lined up to do it. The challenges are great. We do have diverse needs, socioeconomic backgrounds. We all have different perspectives, and that's beautiful. That's what makes America great. We're a melting pot. It's been like that for a long time. But as supervisor, my job is to help us realize that more or less we all kind of live under one roof of Humboldt County, and the role of supervisor is supposed to be nonpartisan. An elected representative who hears the voices of their district, advocates for the district's needs to the Board of Supervisors and the county, and tries to come up with ideas and ways to implement those ideas on behalf of the community. So my biggest challenge, I hope, is to rally people together that we put our differences aside, we identify what's important, and we work together to achieve our common goals that are in our community's best interest.
So lastly, on the topic of challenges is, friction creates opportunity for growth. And even having a challenger in this race speaks to a healthy democracy, getting out and speaking to the issues. It's good for us to have debate and dialogue. I'm no stranger to the challenges. In fact, some of the most enjoyable moments in my life have been based around challenges. I have a background in competitive sports and have had a chance to play at national and world competitions. And in those roles, it's a matter of making sure that the people you're working with can achieve their potential by understanding what are their roles and how do we get to that goal together. So the recipe of collaboration that I bring forward is a way to get there. I've used that working with private landowners to solve issues of land and water. And I've used that working with the public committee, McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee. And we have seen great progress in both the work I've done in conservation and in our community. The county is filled with incredibly devoted, skilled, talented people. I understand the issues across the 5th District, and I am ready to be a fierce advocate for the needs locally, at the state level, and at the federal level. Thank you.
Looking to issue a closing statement or a response to her?
If you don't have anything, we could.
I can
well,
throw
that
it.
was someone else's question. That's what I wanted to do as soon as.
I just have a question. Yeah. So I just want to clarify, because it's been brought up to my attention a number of times. Why are you challenging Mary Burke? Mary Burke is not the incumbent. Steve Madrone is retiring. The establishment has endorsed Mary Burke. I've not asked anybody for their endorsement. I've not asked anybody for any money. I just wanted to clarify that I'm not a challenger. I am also running for an open seat on the Board of Supervisors. And just because I don't have the support of all of the people who have made the decisions that have got us in this position doesn't mean that I don't have support, and it doesn't mean that I'm a challenger. I am here on even ground, and I'm here to represent the community.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll have questions from the audience. Let's start with Morningstar.
Yeah, so I know you guys don't have any control over the medical community, but everybody's talking about growing, and yet we have over 250 people in this community that don't have a primary care physician. And it's only going to get worse as the population grows, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people who want to, in the medical community, who want to stay up here. And so my question to you is, and there's also a lot of unhoused people in this community, and I don't hear anybody talking about that. And I think it's really important, because they're begging and have no place to go. And I don't see any housing development for them. All I see is McKinleyville's just growing like crazy with all these big tract homes that are expensive. It's not affecting the people who already live here. And also, what are we going to do about this medical situation here? I mean, it's huge and it's drastic.
Okay, Evan, you go first.
Okay, thank you for deciding, because I was going to see what we were going to do here. Did I catch your name this Morningstar? Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you. These are really valid issues. The overall medical system here is missing some really important components. We travel for medical. We have to go to San Francisco and Santa Rosa for the things that we need, and it presents a tremendous burden. We've been very fortunate through our insurance that we've had help with travel and lodging, and world-class medical care in San Francisco has made it so that I'm not broke. But we probably would have died if we stayed here. My wife wouldn't be with us, and her medical care through Open Door and the revolving door of Open Door, unfortunately. The person who misdiagnosed her isn't even around anymore, zero accountability. It's unfortunate. And there are wonderful people here. So I can't speak, I'm not speaking poorly about the people. It's our lack of resources as a system, because there are amazing people that wake up every day and try to make the best with the resources they have and the teams they have. I personally wish that we all had access to Medi-Cal. I think rich or poor, if you walk into the hospital and you need help, you should not be turned away because of money. We should have enough compassion with our technology to take care of people and not leave people broken, sick, and in the streets over medical bills. There are people that are unhoused because of medical expenses and economic failure that has occurred because of that. And what just a tragedy, what a terrible thing it says to the nature of humanity that we would treat people that way. I think there should be a place for people, and that's why I spoke in favor of Measure V, even though I generally am not interested in things that are price fixing, unless they're going to price fix my groceries and my gas and the other things. I think that if you displace vulnerable parts of the population, they become unhoused and they become sick, and that's not right. We can do better than that. And so I would like to work with the county departments and see how we can advocate for better services and see if we can attract and retain people here. And I think that's part of the economic growth model. This is going to sound silly, but what I've heard from a number of people is it's not the doctors that don't want to stay here, it's their families. So doctors move here, their families get bored, they want to leave, and they do. And that's really unfortunate. So I mean, I wish that some doctor's wife or husband would start a book club or something that was like enthralling and people wanted to stay here. But the community has to figure out how to retain people. But we need to take care of people.
But endless growth doesn't help that.
Endless growth does not help that. But from my understanding, we need economic growth to support our budget, and we need a healthy budget to support our community. And so we need some sort of an industry here that creates money with a value-added process. Hopefully it's clean, where we can export something and import money. We've done it with fish, we've done it with cannabis, we've done it with timber, and those are the value-added things that bring money into this community. The hospitals are great, but those bills are huge, and they get paid by insurance companies at a percentage of the face value of the bill. I'm all ears and would love to be a helpful participant in finding solutions to these issues, because the health of our community depends on it, and they're remarkably important. So would love to learn and help and aid and do my part to help fix that.
I have a question.
Just a minute, let's give Mary a chance to answer that one.
Thank you for the question about how do we improve the medical conditions locally. So I think in your question you spoke to the lack of housing, and so the lack of housing is a critical driver of the fact that we're not retaining the residents that come through the new resident program, and we tend not to retain doctors and medical professionals. In fact, just the other day when I was talking with someone who serves on the board for medical community, they were talking about how the hospitals had to provide housing for doctors, and that doctors can't move into this community and find housing stock available. And in addition, it's not just sprawl out in multifamily houses, but we need that diversity of housing stock so that there's an entry point for people who are looking for a single bedroom house, or if it's a medical professional that has 4 children, we need the upper end of housing. So we definitely need housing across the spectrum so that when people come here and are ready to live and invest here, there is a place for them to live. So housing is a critical component. I am glad that Supervisor Natalie Arroyo has already started some of this effort of looking into what are the ways that we can improve the medical situation locally. And so I look forward to joining her. One of the elements here, and there's a lot of great work, let me just back up, there's a lot of great work that is going on. So the county is working with Sorrel Leaf to provide mental health and services for youth. The county has just been in a position to move forward the rebuilding of the St. Byron's facility. So there are a number of projects that are moving forward to help improve the medical conditions in this community. But I believe Mad River Hospital's been up for sale how many times, and that deal has fallen through. So I believe the competition between hospitals is important, and that the support, I know it will take a huge investment. I'd be interested in working with the state to understand what kind of investment could we get to build and upgrade Mad River Hospital, should we be able to find a buyer that would be interested in that kind of facility, or even look at the option to have a public hospital. So we have a vital need for specialty medicine in this community, and I think housing is a critical element, and I believe the upgrading local facilities is a huge budgetary investment that it will take, but it will be critical to keeping local medical professionals. In the short term, I've also heard the solution of helping people who travel out of the area have a method to get transportation down to other medical facilities. So in the short term, some sort of a transit option, so that people aren't having to spend, or people who aren't in a position to drive themselves can get transit down to other medical facilities. I wish I had better answers for this problem. I believe it's what you call a wicked problem, when it's not just one solution, but it's many solutions that need to come together to create the community that supports our medical professionals.
Okay, other questions?
The Commons, is that private equity? Off Hiller?
Humboldt Commons, private equity, as in, is it a private business?
Yes,
My understanding is a nonprofit.
because I called, and efficiency is $345,000.
Oh, affordability?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Not-
Yeah, it is not necessarily that affordable, but they are partnering with an affordable housing
Yeah, they said
business.
they'd give them 2 acres of the 19 that they have. Yeah.
Right, so there will be a more affordable, but again, I think the question of affordability, even building what is, quote, affordable housing, does not meet the housing needs of people who, are low and very low income. So there are very real issues in providing housing for truly affordable housing in our community.
And the Mad River Hospital, is that up for sale for private equity, or is there something going to be done governmentally for that kind of?
That's the question: is how to find a buyer that my understanding is one of the last family-owned hospitals in the country. But the sales, through the years have not gone through. So what are those critical factors? I don't know, but I'd be interested in really trying to support that sale.
If I can chime in on the hospital thing, I would love to see UCSF buy it as like a auxiliary teaching hospital. There's so many people that drive from here to San Francisco every day, and once you start doing it, it's like if you have a green car, you see green cars on the road, and you start driving to San Francisco for medical, and you start realizing how many people here go to San Francisco all the time for medical. They just closed the dialysis center here in McKinleyville, so it's like, what are people supposed to do? People need access to resources, and it's obvious, right? Like, we're no longer a real affluent area, right? We're in here, we're calling ourselves poor. We're saying our budget's in the crapper. We're saying our community infrastructure isn't real good. So it's like, how do we uplift this place? And so they can market to UCSF. We already have doctors that come up from San Francisco to hold childhood cardiology clinics, melanoma clinics, breast cancer clinics. There's surgeons that come up here from Santa Rosa. How do we create a facility maybe that they can call their own? So rather than sending people up here to visit and get bored, they've got a hub here, and we've got telehealth, and we've got real practitioners here that are rooted in the scientific medical teams in San Francisco, Stanford, Berkeley, Davis, but up here. And I think we're close enough to an airport that's got direct flights to San Francisco that we should be able to pull together some sort of a plan, especially as it relates to the sale of Mad River Hospital. My wife and I have talked about this for years because we lived on the road where the gentleman who owns Mad River has a horse pasture. And we've seen these cycles of this and that. And when we get hurt, we look at it and we go, is this bleeding bad enough that we need to go to Mad River, or do we drive to Eureka? And so it would be nice if Mad River was very strong. And not to negate it now, because Mad River's been great when we needed them. We've had our children there. Mad River's great. But we need more. And I would love to get behind that.
Do we have any other questions?
Hi, my name's Doug Paul. My wife and I moved to McKinleyville in 1990, started buying our house, so we've watched McKinleyville change over all these years. And I guess my specific question is the town center and Central Avenue. A number of my friends, fifth generation Humboldt, we are highly concerned about Central Avenue. How they can talk about narrowing that at all. Any time of day you go to Central Avenue, it is full of traffic. Both lanes, all lanes. Look at when they stop at a light. These days we're backed up 15 cars. So how in the world are you going to narrow Central Avenue? And is that already a done deal? Because everybody says, oh, it's in the future, oh, we push it off. Well, then all of a sudden they go to that beautiful intersection at Hiller and Alliance and put in that roundabout crap, where that's a giant, huge intersection that has worked fine for the 45 years we've lived here. So, I mean, I'm serious, especially about Central Avenue. I think it's ridiculous. I won't vote for anybody that wants to narrow Central Avenue, period.
I appreciate you, Doug. And I've heard a number of people in the community talk about this as well. You don't mind if I jump in for a second, do you?
I think you're first.
Well,
Yep.
thank you.
You too.
That's one of the things that really aggravated me, is that with the passing of this town center ordinance, that with some text messages and some decisions, that the road diet was lumped into this plan. And that's really unfortunate. We talk about riders and government bills, and we expect that from big government, but I don't think we expect that locally. And that happened here. And I was also told, don't worry about it, by Mr. Madrone. Years down the future, it'll probably never happen. They even waived the need for a traffic study. I don't think it makes any sense to me. I've had a business on Central Avenue, and I've watched the congestion. I've watched the 8 o'clock traffic. I've watched the after-school traffic. I've watched the Miller Coors truck park in the middle of the street to wheel a pallet jack of beer across into a business, because you can't go around the block or park behind any of the buildings here because the town wasn't laid out properly to begin with. And so to further restrict Central Avenue is foolish, in my opinion, without exploring other traffic calming measures like connecting McKinleyville Avenue through to the roundabout that we built. It's a sidewalk to nowhere. You can't put that responsibility on developers. The county at some point has to take responsibility for county infrastructure and not expect builders to build it. And I think a traffic study is in order, and I think that it's very disappointing that our current 5th District Supervisor allowed that road diet to be tossed into the town center plan without adding in any other additional traffic studies or traffic calming measures. So I'm in support with you, Mr. Paul, and I know that Mrs. Burke was part of the McMac that approved that road diet, and that is one of the items that motivated me to step up to serve this community.
Well, I think there's one topic that really does bring us all together, and it is our concern over the roads in McKinleyville. And I'll say it again, our roads need to work for residents, they need to work for businesses, and they need to work for safety for everybody to be able to use these roads, multimodal traffic, commuters, businesses. So is it a done deal that an ordinance was passed that had a cross-section action in it for Central Avenue. It is not a done deal. So again, I'm going to state, our community deserves to have, we need to have that comprehensive multimodal circulation plan so that we can understand how one change in one section of our community is related to changes across our community. So it was stated that nothing would move forward until more design and more dialogue happened. So again, we can't have changes happening in small sections unless they're thought of in context of our whole community. And that is what we have. What we have right now, we have county governance, and then we have a local municipal advisory committee, 8 people who are volunteering to do their best to understand land use planning, circulation, all of the above, to bring it forward, to think about what the future of our community looks like. When we think about the future of what's going to happen in the center of town, what the ordinance offers is a chance for the build out for our community to have a gathering place, a place to live, work, and play that could bring up to 6,000 more people into the center of our town. That's a lot of people. So the forward-thinking element of the ordinance is that we need attention on our roads. We need our roads to work for all of us. And that is possible. It is not a zero-sum game that we can't have both circulation and safety. We can have it all if it's planned well. So that's what I am looking for, and that's what I would bring forward as a supervisor, is that we need that plan. We need to understand our roads and how they work and where they don't work, and is in fact a traffic calming measure on Central Avenue the way the cross-section was designed? Is that the way it moves forward? We need to understand that better.
You know, the calming stuff that they put in this last go-around, the bump outs and stuff, 70% of the guys around, people around here drive trucks. You can't make a left turn without going into the other lane or going across that stupid bump out. So, and then the yellow stuff they put all in Eureka and everything, the bumps, I can't tell you how many people have fallen and slipped on that stuff. And it's like, oh, we got a grant. Well, geez, let's have common sense. If I challenge anybody, take your chair and go sit out on Central Avenue for a few hours and monitor the traffic. And then tell me what you're proposing. And I don't, after I saw what happened on Hiller overnight, it's further, why should we trust the government? Oh, it's going to be way out, it's going to be way out. All of a sudden, they got all excited and whipped all that stuff on Hiller, and it was just ridiculous.
If I
And
could,
how much money was wasted.
if I could, the Hilda Road was what is called a quick build. It was designed to be a temporary installation. So the fact that we saw it go in and then come out was all a part of the design.
Yeah, but it was also, it came out quickly because of all the blowback from people being totally unhappy on what went down there.
So the roundabout was not designed adequately for school buses and fire trucks. You're exactly right.
The
So,
intersection's fine for school buses and ambulances. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, there's not that much traffic there to warrant a roundabout.
When
And
stuff
what would
like
be-
this goes down, it's just further. How can we trust the government? They
Yeah.
tell us one thing and then do another.
Yeah, it seems like it's wasteful and poor planning.
And how much money did that
It is
cost?
wasteful.
Do you know, Steve, what that cost to do that?
I don't know specifically what it cost, but.
I mean, I've heard $100 and some
I thought
thousand
that
dollars.
I thought that this was supposed to be a debate of asking the two candidates some questions and getting the responses, whereas this is starting to turn into people just speaking up from the audience
Yeah,
about their
we really do
concerns.
not
And
want-
frankly,
Pardon me.
if you have concerns about these things, you've never called me. You could call
My
me.
friend Lisa calls you all the time.
Call me and we can
All
talk
the
about it.
time.
My point is that.
It doesn't change anything.
Okay, this is
Mr.
really not the
Madrone?
right format for this.
Mr. Paul asked a question about the road diet.
Question about
It
the
was
road diet,
answered.
right?
And now I would like to answer the other side of it, but this is a dialogue and people are heated.
You're in the audience too.
And Mr. Madrone is an audience member. It maybe was not appropriate to direct a question to Mr. Madrone, but I can respect the passion of the
You
community
can
member who's
respond.
speaking up, and I would like to respond. think
And then we'll move on.
this is a very important moment because McKinleyville feels like this a lot. And there are people who are on the MMAC who are making decisions in a very, very effective group of people that are very well organized, and they know how to write letters to the editor, and they know how to market themselves. And they are representing the community. But there are a lot of people like Mr. Paul in this community that have lived here for a long time that don't show up to these meetings. They don't show up to the MCMAC meetings. They don't like the way things are going. And when they speak their mind, this is what they're met with. They're met with contested disappointment and standoffishness from our elected officials. That's really disappointing. I expect more from our supervisor, especially in a public context, in a road diet that you allowed to pass during your term as service. If you're going to bring in 6,000 more people into the town center and create less lanes of traffic and not create any alternative thoroughfares, I ask, what were you guys planning? I don't understand, and I wish that the county would take more responsibility for the public infrastructure. Not as it relates to Ann Lindsay's job or Mrs. Pearson's project or any of these things, but as it relates to the community, having appropriate infrastructure that serves our needs, that our roads connect, that we don't have sidewalks to nowhere, as Mrs. Burke pointed out, that we don't do jobs just because there's funding available, but that we do jobs that serve the constituency and make this like a better place to live. It's obvious we have some differences. That's okay. But we should be able to engage in dialogue, understand each other's perspectives, and work together to find reasonable solutions. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. There's a proposal, actually it's an application for zoning for an Amazon warehouse out by the airport. And I have concerns, and I've heard from many others that share those concerns regarding just an infamous reputation of Amazon, how they treat their workers, including pay, and increased traffic. I've had people tell me, oh, there won't be any increased air traffic. I disagree. I don't think, because I've done some research on it, it inevitably will bring more freight air into our airport. Those of us in this part are living in the landing and takeoff zone here. It inevitably, and they're admitting right from the get, it's going to bring in increased truck traffic. And with that comes all kinds of environmental issues, especially for elderly people who may be having trouble breathing, and other kinds of things. And I'd like to know if you're on the board when the issue comes up to pass at this point, from what you know, what would be your response?
Do you remember who's first?
Your turn.
It's my turn.
Yeah.
So my understanding, if the Amazon project moves forward and if it were to come to the board, it would be a quasi-judicial decision, right? So it's important to not get out in front of such a decision with, biases laying the stage. So I'll talk about what I know and what I've heard from the community. So a few things. Thinking about Amazon as a business coming into our community, there would certainly be jobs associated with this. I have heard from folks that they're concerned that these jobs would move from individual people to robots, exactly. I've also heard that, there are, and those are minimum wage jobs, and I've heard that, okay, well, but there are drivers who are getting paid more than minimum wage that would work for Amazon. Well, there are currently drivers that are delivering packages, and those drivers work for FedEx and UPS, and those are unionized jobs, good living wage jobs. And so thinking about this and hearing from the community, those the consequence of bringing in Amazon could displace those union jobs. And I think we've seen in the news that Amazon is not in favor of unionizing. Also, I've heard the concerns over pollution. I've heard the concerns over the impact to our roads. And I've heard from the community about, not wanting to change the flavor of that area. And so I know that it is important for the property owner to be able to develop that area. In fact, that area could be targeted for a great deal of economic development, a second hotel, maybe something bigger. There's a relationship between the airport business park and an idea that Supervisor Madrone has flown called the Vista Point Park, which would be a great local attraction, a campground perhaps, and maybe a small facility for local weddings and other events with an ocean view that would pull people off the freeway and connect them into the airport business park. What a fantastic idea. And I just ask, the property owner, is that the type of development, Amazon, that you'd want to see to match with such an inspiring economic generator as the Vista Point Park? So there's an incredible amount of potential around the airport business park and the airport itself to benefit from the increased flights, to benefit from this planning for the Vista Point Park. But is Amazon the right kind of development that we want to see as a business in this portion of McKinleyville? But again, it would come forward to the supervisors as a quasi-judicial decision. But lastly, what I've heard from other community members who've done research on this is that community benefits agreements could be a way to move forward. And, I've been hearing that the Municipal Advisory Committee happens behind closed doors. It is indeed a public meeting, publicly noticed meeting. And in these spaces, we can bring forward conversations. Like just last meeting, we talked about affordable housing. And in the next meeting, we're going to be talking about McKinleyville roads. So let's bring these conversations forward about what McKinleyville wants to see for its future. What are our community agreements? What do they look like? Thank you.
Can you hear me? So this is an interesting one because you talk about land use and zoning. The airport business park, that's a principally permitted use. That's light industrial, warehouse, commercial, next to an airport. It's a warehouse that relies on inbound air freight. So from strictly a zoning and planning and land use perspective, that's like the exact right kind of building that you would historically see built there. And I know that in the past, Mr. Mosier, who owns that subdivision up there, has really tried to build it aesthetically. And I can appreciate and respect that. We wanted to build a beer warehouse there about 8 years ago, and he said absolutely not. So I don't know what changed with Amazon coming in. Money. Well, okay, so money. But who took the money? Was it the Board of Supervisors? So can the Board of Supervisors be blamed for decisions that are made in the private sector? With that being said, Amazon's very methodical. Why is Amazon coming to Humboldt County? There must be sufficient demand here for them to have some sort of an efficiency. So if we really don't want Amazon here, right, we always hear vote with your dollar. Well, if you really don't want Amazon here, don't buy things from Amazon. And I'm sorry to be the one to say that, but that's how it works. You know, if you don't like a company, you don't patronize them. But in Humboldt County, we're so geographically isolated. How easy is it to go and find the thing that you want? Can you get in the car always and go and buy that bowl or that mixer or that tie or those pair of shoes? You know, when I was in school, I graduated in 2008 with a marketing degree. E-commerce was really new still, and we had no clue when I was in school how disruptive and impactful it was going to be to to the mom and pop economies, to Main Street, to shopping malls, to old towns, downtowns, to where you're in a store shopping for a camera, and you look at it, you go, it's $1,700, and you pull up your phone and you look, and it's like, well, I get the same phone delivered to my house in 3 days for $9.59. Most people say, hey, thanks for letting me look at this, and they leave. So Amazon has done something that's, in a terrible way, it's remarkable. They've cornered the market on a lot of consumer goods and delivered on convenience and price and selection, which from a business perspective, like those are consumer perception factors that really matter. Do I want a big Amazon building next to the airport? Not necessarily. Do I mind that when I buy something on Amazon, it usually shows up on Thursday instead of 24 hours later? Like, I don't necessarily mind. But my issue is that if something is principally permitted use on a piece of land, the county kind of has to let that entity build or it's discrimination. I mean, imagine if it was a different business and it wasn't Jeff Bezos and somebody came out and said, I don't want that business here. You know, people would kind of go like, whoa, like what's going on here? Like, so I think that we have to be really careful as a county to discriminate against business entities, regardless of how we feel about them, as long as they're not major polluters or war crime committers or horrible people. We have kind of a duty to honor our land use and zoning and allow an entity to build a building that's principally permitted use in that location. And with that being said, I don't want to come across as in favor of them, but I'm in favor of logic. And one thing, as Mrs. Burke brought up, is that in other communities, there's been talk about these community benefit agreements. And those are real. And I actually reached out to Mr. Madrone the other day, and I got a very short email back saying, John Ford meeting April 20-something. And it was very dull and dry and provided me zero information, and I felt like I was talking to somebody who doesn't support me, when I was just looking for information about if there had been any conversation about community benefit agreements, because those are kind of the only leg that the community has to stand on to ask Amazon to do something for us in return. And sometimes those things happen. They may build trails. They may offer a certain number of high-paying jobs and to hire locals. But I'm not in control of it. And I see your frustration, Morningstar, and I would love to talk with you more about it, because if you have ideas on how to effectively deal with it, I would love to learn from you. But from all of the reading I've done and all of the information I'm trying to find, they're a tough entity to fight, and we must support them here in the community enough that like they're coming. So, and I get it.
agree.
I'd love to hear your opinion.
I don't agree with supporting somebody like Jeff Bezos in this community. I'm sorry. He is responsible for a lot of really bad things that go on in this country that he supports.
Sure.
And I don't agree with you at all that we can't discriminate about what we want in our community.
So how can we keep that business out here, in your opinion?
Amazon is not something I want in this community.
And I can respect that, but
He has
how
no
can
respect for his workers, and he's a slave driver. And I don't respect that, and I don't support that.
And I don't
never
respect that
will.
either. But how
But you
then?
must, because you're okay with it.
No, I'm not okay with it, but I'm from a logical perspective, I'm trying to look at code and zoning.